I want to welcome everyone to the Live Well Kalkaska Substance Free Coalition's Coffee with the Coalition Forum. This is an open and informal discussion about substance use disorders and related topics and concerns within the Kalkaska community in Northern Michigan. Today's discussion is about stigma and language. Before we go further, I'd like everybody to introduce themselves. Linda? It's about stigma and language. Before we go further, I'd like everybody to introduce themselves. Somebody is Linda? Stigma?
Sure. I'm Linda Solom of Opioid Prevention. Sure. I'm Linda Solom of Opioid Prevention.
That is weird. Is somebody watching this on Facebook? Weird. No, Kim? Is somebody watching this on Facebook? No? All right. Sorry, folks. We're gonna go off live stream because something's up. All right. Sorry, folks. We're gonna go off live stream. And we'll put this on Facebook at a later time. Okay, there we go. I'm not sure what happened there. Sorry, Grace. Anyways, that was interesting. Go ahead, Linda.
Okay. My name is Linda Solom, and I'm a substance use disorder prevention specialist with Up North Prevention, Grand Traverse County, and working with the work groups of the Wellness Center in doing a crisis stabilization unit.
Awesome. Tim Hudson?
Hi, I'm Tim Hudson. I'm a behavioral health consultant with the University of Michigan, specifically the Michigan Opioid Collaborative. I cover the northern 21 counties.
Kim?
Hello, everybody. My name is Kim, and I'm with Harm Reduction Michigan. I wish I could show my face. I just got this new computer, and I don't know what is going on. It just shows black background. Anyways, hello, everybody. I'm happy to be here. Grayson, thank you so much for being here. Yay.
And I'm Suzanne Prentice, and I'm the coordinator of the Live Well Kalkaska Substance Free Coalition. Today, we are welcoming Grayson Lewis. She's a peer recovery support coordinator for NEMSAS Recovery Center, and she's going to be talking about stigma and language. Go ahead, Grayson.
Hi, thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, that new title is a mouthful, isn't it? Like, I had to work on memorizing it. Like, I don't think I've ever had a title before that had 4 different words in it. So just moving up in the career world.
Right.
So yeah, I do have a presentation. I don't know if you want something like that, or do you just want to keep things more formal? Chat.
Let me go ahead and you should be good to screen share if you need to.
Okay, I've been practicing this all weekend, so we should be in good shape, hypothetically, maybe. Anyway, my name is Grayson Lewis, and I am the new Peer Recovery Supports Coordinator at NEMSAS Recovery Center. I'm also a woman in long-term recovery, which for me means no alcohol and drugs since August of 2014. And I love recovery because it has given me hope for my life and purpose, meaning, things that I never imagined that I would have when I was still in my active use. Which one do you see? Are you seeing my thing with all the notes, or do you see the one over here? It's being fussy today.
I don't see your notes. It looks like it's in, you're good. You're in presenter mode.
Cool. Good. I don't want, my notes have to be a secret. So you think that I'm just spouting all of this like eloquent and intellectually structured arguments out of my head. No notes here going on. So stigma is a difficult topic, and I feel like we talk about it a lot, but somehow we still don't talk about it enough. Stigma and the words that we use matter so much. They matter on an individual level, and they matter on a societal level. These words and ideas shape our core beliefs. They get passed on from one generation to the next. And some people even benefit from these entrenched stigmas, which I think is part of the reason why we really have such a hard time fighting this stuff. And making small changes in the words we use publicly and privately can honestly change the world. So we all work in the field. We're pretty familiar with stigma. I am trying personally to even get away from the word stigma because I feel like we have gone beyond stigma and this is prejudice. So some definitions of stigma, they are social constructs. They're not real. We create them within our society. And they all have a purpose. They have a deeper meaning than just to separate socially and be like, oh, those people aren't like me. They're different than I am. Maybe I'm better than they are. But they actually serve to maintain the status quo in a whole bunch of different systems. So William White, who is a very well-known addiction and recovery historian and researcher, identified 5 social institutions that actually benefit from the stigma surrounding substance use disorder. And those are the media, the criminal justice system, the child welfare system, alcohol and pharmaceutical industries, and the addiction treatment industries. So by keeping these concepts and words alive, we're playing into the hands of those with the money and power who want to perpetuate these systems. These stigmas create political and economic advantages for some groups while holding other groups at a disadvantage. Some groups have the power and privilege and some do not. Some institutions are receiving a whole ton of money to treat these issues. And so the focus shifts from it being like a social issue, a family issue, a small town issue, something we can address and work to fix, to something that we need to rely on the criminal justice system, the child welfare system. They become issues that are not tackleable by people like us, and they get shunted over into these other systems to address it. And I think we see how well that is working out. And it's not very well. I haven't worked in the field for a very long time. So just finding out the kind of funding that goes to something as small as addiction treatment, because out of those different things that I listed, the media, the criminal justice, the prison systems, like the treatment resources are pretty small. But when you start putting dollar signs on how much money is going to that kind of thing, it blows my mind. So the focus has to be on changing this from a crisis that other people don't have to a public health crisis. And I think we've seen that a lot more with the opioid crisis. Things have changed a little more. It's become a lot more public, but we still have a ways to go. Oh, no, I don't want to play a video. So what we call a problem is a part of the problem. The language we use is so vitally important. I was a communications major in college, so I'm fascinated by the words that we choose to use and how they impact the other person and how we interpret their meaning through words. I think they're kind of magical. And if we're not intentional and deliberate about the words we use, we can serve to just make things worse with the best of intentions. So modern culture has used stigmas to denote devalued social categories. So those are categories like cons, an ex-con, a former prisoner, ideas like once an addict, always an addict. They never change. Stigma robs people of rightful life opportunities. So, for example, people with felonies have a hard time getting jobs, getting apartments, college funding. And that is stigma-based. That has nothing to do with their specific felony or their crime or extenuating circumstances or any other factor of who that person is. Credit score, income, those are not taken into consideration at all. Stigma interacts with illness and exposes people to distorted experiences with criminal/mental health/medical treatment. I feel like that could be an entire presentation. If you've ever talked to someone in recovery about their experiences going to places like the ER or asking a medical professional for help, I find that deeply saddening that is one of the largest areas that still seems to be dragging their feet is the medical community. Because it seems like they should be the ones who are on the front lines of new researches, new treatments, new modalities, but instead there's just all this buildup, this discrimination of negative emotions. So things are not being healed. And that leads directly to healthcare systems withholding appropriate services. I've seen a big push nowadays for doctors in ERs to begin treating people in withdrawal, treating people in psychosis. And isn't it just absurd that this has to become a subject that we need to rally around? Is doctors treating people with this disorder like they're a human being, a patient? It blows my mind. So William White also said our words can be used to empower or disempower. We can build people up or we can break them down. We can humanize or we can objectify. We can engender compassion or fear and hatred. We can unite or we can create enmity. I like that word. And these are simple things, simple word choices that change the individual's lives and can change how society works. So the language we choose is vitally important. If you want to care for something, you call it a flower. If you want to kill something, you call it a weed. And we see that all the time. Your perception is everything. It's because some weeds are beautiful, but if you call it a weed, you don't really care for it the same way you would care for it if you call it a flower. So the word substance abuse, what a hot button issue. The people in recovery that I know hate this term, even though it's still so frequently used, because the word abuse implies choice, that we are actively abusing substances, making that choice regularly. Also, it doesn't make sense. I hear a lot of jokes like, oh, I never abused my substance. I took really good care of it. It was my number one priority. I knew where it was and took care of it well. And I've got a note here that in 1973, the National Commission on Marijuana and Drug Abuse criticized the word abuse, saying that it would only serve to confuse public attitudes about drug-using behaviors. And since that report, the word has flourished. I regularly still hear professionals say substance abuse. It's still very common. Even the term drink responsibly has the implication that people with alcohol use disorder are just drinking irresponsibly. They're making the choice to drink irresponsibly. So the root of the abuse thing implies willful misconduct, that they just went out and did something to themselves, knowing full well the risk, when in reality, most of us engaged in activities that were culturally very normal. As teenagers, we participated in these celebrations, these customs, traditions that were common. And no, I'll talk about that later. So the word abuse has just created this host of false perceptions and myths about alcohol and drug users. And it foils attempts to draft meaningful policies that will better serve communities, because this isn't a public health issue, it's just a bad choice that people are making. And it absolves the alcohol and pharmaceutical industries of any wrongdoing, because it provides them full access to saturate the social markets with products that are potentially addictive, and with the exception of a few cases, without warnings. I think alcohol only has warnings on it for pregnant women drinking. So cigarettes have a little sticker like, warning, nicotine can be an addictive chemical. But none of our alcohol bottles say anything like that. And I don't think I've ever seen a label quite like that on a prescription bottle either. Warning, this drug can be habit forming. Kind of interesting that has never happened. So keeping this system that abusing drugs is the only way to become addictive, it makes it possible for us to practice these incredible incarceration rates, because that's our solution. If someone gets in trouble from making these choices, then it's only appropriate to punish them for making the negative choice. And there is actually no research done at all that shows that you have to abuse alcohol or drugs to acquire the disease of addiction. That is assumed. You can use nicotine or alcohol responsibly, legally, and still become addicted. The very agencies that were created to help people with addictive illnesses have actually helped to create a culture that vilifies the people that they were asked to help. With all the labeling and this attitude of only we can help, only we have the systems in place to help people. If your person is making this choice, send them to us and we can help. And that is not going so well for us. Did we already see this slide? I feel like this is a repeat. Maybe not. So having the terms that everyone is really familiar with, if I asked everyone to unmute and name some terms to describe those with alcohol or substance use disorders, I think we can all guess the kind of list that we would make. And unfortunately, it implies all of these other things. The stigma is implied for anyone with these disorders. We have deficient characters. We're self-inflicted this disease on ourselves. We made the choice. We can't be trusted with jobs or choosing our own treatment. Where we'll go to treatment, what treatment will be most effective for us. Those decisions are taken out of our hands. And getting to know more about how the images are used for this broader picture, not even just the one-on-one aspect, but as a society, as a people, approving pictures like this is awful. This is awful. Look at the face of the addicted person there. It's just like the mindless, staring eyes, just like willingly opening their mouth wide to get hooked. And that's on the cover of Time magazine. Just imagine like the layers of approval that had to go through. And that's the media profiting from this image. Even though it says how we get addicted, the implication is how other people get addicted. Because none of us are going to look at that and relate and be like, oh, yeah, that image reminds me of myself. No, that's clearly other people that look like that. So really having that understanding about the importance of the words we use and getting to see kind of that meta picture and not just seeing the impact of stigma on one person. I feel like if you choose a derogatory term for somebody and you say it, or you don't think they'll overhear you and you say it, you can see that effect on the person pretty clearly. Most of the time, depending on the word. Maybe substance abuse is a little less harmful, but we can kind of see that impact more clearly in front of us. But seeing the larger picture and how these companies and industries profit off of promoting that stigma kind of changes your opinion on it. I think like to be an advocate, this is about more than just speaking up for the individual person's feelings and rights, but about starting to challenge these deeply held beliefs that have been in our society for so long that I feel like people feel like, how can I even challenge that? How can we change the stigma? There's too much stigma here. We can't even start to change it. And that's why it's so important to start to change the narrative into that idea of this is not a crisis of bad people, of bad drugs like fentanyl infecting our society and taking away our children. It's a public health crisis. They are things that we as a people can address and help with. It's not something we need to rely on a mega corporation to handle. So we ask people to rethink their beliefs about addiction, not in terms of active addiction, because the media reminds us daily of what that looks like, but the root causes of addiction. In a sense, the opioid epidemic is our path to social enlightenment. People are beginning to understand that addiction is much more sinister than first believed and occurs in the lives of good people. So people do not choose addiction. Most people who drink or use drugs don't end up addicted, even if they engage in harmful use over a period of time, like many teenagers do. And the teenagers, I think, kind of understand that. Because they have been conditioned to think that addiction is willful and only happens to people who are irresponsible and negligent. So they are making decisions about whether to drink or use with bad information because they think that it's possible to drink responsibly and still stay safe. Recovery is self-directed. People in recovery are capable of making their own decisions about their treatment, about what treatments they want to use, as long as they have good information. Knowledge is really the kryptonite to stigma. As long as they have good information about what their options are, what the alternatives are, people in recovery are fully capable of making these decisions. But as long as we feel like we need to step in and make those decisions for them, that perpetuates this idea of people being helpless. Recovery is finding positive attachments, self-discovery. We don't have to prepare people for life in a predetermined pathway. Treatment process is an opportunity to connect people with their own beliefs and values, activities that engage their interest, connect with social groups that they are interested in. educating people in long-term recovery. This hits home for me because I believe I was in recovery for 5 or 6 years before I knew about a lot of the options for multiple pathways. I came up in the era of there's AA, and if you are lucky, there might be NA, and that was it. I had no idea that there were other groups. And I will always have my roots in 12-step meetings, but just knowing that there are other things and knowing that I had that gap, that 5-year gap in recovery before I started hearing about those other groups is crazy, because this wasn't my first rodeo and I was completely unaware of those options. And that's the kind of thing that happens routinely. By our silence, others will define us. That's a big one because I feel like people in recovery have been very quiet for a long time. I think the latest stat is 24 million Americans in active recovery in the United States, but you don't hear from us very much. Well, you guys do, because you're in the field, so you get to see us all the time because we're in your face yelling about what we want you to do. I feel like the mainstream public has no idea. It's pretty quiet. Unfortunately, healthy change takes time. It takes time and small steps. As much as we may want to pick it, it doesn't always happen that way. Advocacy can be very quiet and very scared, but just speaking up and saying, no, those terms don't apply anymore. That's the old way. And we can do that for our next generation, which I know is all about what you guys do in prevention. The reality is that the majority of people suffering from addiction are good people. Our family members, friends, coworkers, church members, rich and poor, they equally represent the members of our communities. But you guys know that. I'm preaching to the choir. I'll do my little blurb on NMSAS. Yay, NMSAS. How do we help? So the CCAR recovery coach training is going really well. We did not even advertise our last training and we filled up. So more and more people are knowing about coaching and getting out there and wanting the training. And that's a direct result of our coaches working in the field, because there are some phenomenal people out there doing great things. We do some multiple pathway workshops. Yeah, that's where I heard about the multiple pathways first. We help out the human services referral network as much as we can with our own insight. We have another messaging training coming up in September. I want to say September 9th. They're going to let me do it with Laura, and I'm really excited because she is so much fun. I feel like we're going to have a blast. I just hope we can stay on schedule. And we go out and we do these presentations wherever they will let us talk. They send me everywhere, you guys. They just put me out there. I get out there and try it. Whoever will listen, whoever will record it and play it somewhere, because you never know who's going to hear what they need to change the things. Let me see if I can get away from this. Yay! Cool. Look at that.
Very nice presentation.
Thanks. I'm going to put another link in this. I don't know if you guys have heard about the Addictionary.
I think Tori had sent me something to it, but others.
Yeah. So it's got a whole list of terms, the things that we are trying to move away from, the things that we are trying to promote, and what places, which terminology is helpful for, because there are some words that might be appropriate for some situations and would just fall flat in other situations. I think it's a cool idea. Pull that up to see what we had there. Oh, now I can read the chat. I couldn't read the chat while I was presenting. Oh yeah, go into the hospital. I've been in recovery.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I've had personal experience myself. My son was the one in the hospital, but I've actually been treated poorly as well as the mother of someone with substance use disorder
Mm.
by hospital employees.
So you were there with him.
I was actually, the one time I was on the phone trying to give information because of COVID, I wasn't allowed in. And the nurse that I was talking to was very rude. And then I found out later that she was extremely rude to him as well, both her and another nurse. After they left, a different nurse came on, and she was quite friendly and actually apologized for the behavior of the two previous nurses.
Wow. That's great. That's great. So even though we want to do this change like on this huge level, I really think it starts with those small interactions, because that's the way real change happens. And so I am trying this really relational approach with people when you have that really negative reaction, like, okay, I feel like you've had a really negative experience with someone in active addiction before. Like, I think that's why really people, when you have that really just out of control rudeness, it's not related to the current situation. That's some personal stuff there.
Yeah, I actually, a few years back when my son was in the hospital, the nurse, it was here in Kalkaska, the nurse pretty much said that he was a waste of a bed. And he got defensive. He got very defensive, and I didn't try to calm him down because he had a reason to be. So.
Why was he a waste of a bed? Why wasn't he just another patient to receive treatment?
Because it was substances and not a heart attack.
And they weren't going to treat that.
Right. They just got him to the point where he wasn't. I think they had given him, what was it? I can't remember if he was on a Narcan drip at that time or they were giving him Narcan until he was comfortable. And I ended up having to take him back in that night because it wasn't enough. Come to find out he was having a heart attack.
Oh. And that stigma could have ended his life right there. Fortunately, he has a mother that was willing to take him in and keep an eye on him that night and take him back. But that's like, isn't that negligent? Just pigeonholed. Like, oh, okay, we already know what's going on with this person. No need to look further here.
I have a couple of clients that I take out quite often. It's usually once a week or every other week, depending on how often they need to get to the pharmacy or the doctor. And I go into the pharmacy with these girls. I go into their doctor's appointments if they want me to. I have gone into the courthouse with them, and just recently the jail. And for a girl who wanted to turn herself in. I have never seen so much bullshit in my life. Sorry to say it like that. But I mean, it was down to the point where, it was basically, she's like, I'm not going to beg to go to jail. I mean, they were just being like, so just not nice. And they even went as far as to say after, they had questioned her about, what is your address? She's like, I'm homeless. What is your phone number? I don't have a phone. Well, how are we supposed to get a hold of you? What's your email address? And she turns around because, this is it was hard for her to even walk into that place. Mm-hmm. And she turns around for a second and the lady behind the counter says, look, she doesn't even care. And I blew up and I was like, she does care. like, she's here. Do you even know how hard it was for her to even walk across that parking lot and get into those doors? And you just said that about her right in front of her, like she can't hear you.
Mm-hmm.
I was so mad. It was just, it's ridiculous. And, you know, I go with her to the pharmacy, same thing. You know, we walk up, they greet us as soon as they see what we're picking up in the computer. The attitude changes, even to me. Now I'm looking like I'm toting around some big drug user because she uses Suboxone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and same thing with, you know, medical appointments. And it's just, it's crazy, really, how people are treated at the front desk. The things that people say to them. I don't know. It's crazy. And it's really opened my eyes to see how much horrible stigma is out there by going with these girls to different places. And it breaks my heart to actually watch. And one of my girls says, when we went to the pharmacy the one day, she goes, "Did you see how that girl looked at me?" And, you know, of course I was like, yeah, I didn't want to say anything, but yeah, I did. And she says, that's how everybody looks at me.
Mm.
How
Wow.
sad is that?
Wow.
You know, I mean, we've got to, I don't even know how we can get out there enough to like promote stigma and just shake people and be like, they're human, you know, they have feelings, they have emotions, they're people like you and me. They grew up different, doing different things, you know, like, I don't know. It's just, it drives me crazy just how people perceive another person that uses drugs.
If they, and I know the person that she's talking about, and if they only knew her backstory.
Mm.
If they
Absolutely
only knew her backstory, because
you'd want to adopt her, hug her, keep her. But because she uses drugs, she's targeted as a bad person.
Right.
Absolutely.
She's lost so much. Not her own fault.
Okay, so ignore the link I put in there because it's not working. Just forget it.
I think it's attached to recoveryanswers.org. When I tried searching for it, that's what came up. It's here, I'll put it in the chat. I think this is it. At least it's something similar to what you were discussing.
I think that's where the change happens though, Kim, is just being there, getting to go with them, like as hard as that is, to see that and witness it. You get to be the person that stands up for them and be like, excuse me.
I'll whoop some ass. I'm telling you what.
Excuse me, this individual is a patient here for medical treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And we are patiently waiting for your professional response. Because when we are still consumed by all that shame, we are not good at advocating for ourselves, not in a responsible, professional way. You know, some people will yell and kick and scream, but not maybe in the best way to produce change and break stereotypes.
I feel grateful to be able to go places and to be able to stand with somebody who needs that extra person, who needs that voice, who, you know, I feel lucky to actually be able to go out and see like somebody in actual, like, you know, active use, how they're treated in society versus how I was treated in society. Back in the day, because it's been 11 years since I was in active addiction, but it's so much different now. And I don't know, just seeing all of that, all of the changes, and I don't know. We all want change. We all want change. we're getting there. We're a hell of a lot closer than we were when back in the day when I was, in active addiction. So we're getting there. We have more choices. We have more stuff, and we just got to keep on keeping on.
So you think it is better?
I do. Yeah. Maybe it's just because I know a lot more and because I'm more educated, but I don't know.
I think it's getting there. I mean, we can walk into a hospital now and get someone that understands, but we can still get someone that has that attitude. I think like with Kalkaska, our local like sheriff's department, I think they're doing much better. I applaud our sheriff for trying to make positive changes. He let us come in and do ACEs training to his officers.
Mm-hmm.
So they understand that,
Wow.
that trauma and how that's connected, but there's still a lot of work to be done, and I understand it can be frustrating. I mean, I work with people with substance use disorder quite a bit, not as much as Kim or you, but when you come to substances like methamphetamines, people are hard to talk to because they're not them. There's been, I think, I recently heard that the new methamphetamines that they're using a chemical called P2P rather than the ephedrins, which are more natural, but it's causing brain damage and it's a very serious mental health issues. And you bring them to the hospital and they just let them go. Let them walk out of the hospital, and they really should get some sort of mental health care. Yeah. And why is mental health care different than medical care? I mean, if you walk in with a medical issue, you get treated, but when you walk in with a mental health issue, usually nothing.
And it shouldn't be,
Oh, I've seen the attitudes too. They get them out just as fast as they come in. They don't want them there. It's too much. They didn't want that. Of course, when I was working at Munson in the ER, we were also combating COVID-19 at its peak. And so they didn't want us recovery coaches over in the ER, and they didn't want people that were using drugs in the ER. It was a waste of their time and their energy because they had all these other people with COVID that they needed to save. So then, people with substance use disorders were even treated more like they don't matter because they didn't have COVID. I mean, it's been a mess, and they don't want them in there. The calling a recovery coach over means keeping them in the ER longer, and they didn't want that. They didn't want us in the ER. It messed up their system, basically. But we need to keep advocating, because I can tell you that the people I was actually able to reach and the people that I was actually able to talk to and get on MAT programs and into, different doctors or prenatal programs or anything like that, that was huge. And they really need to bring that back. I mean, I don't know what they do over there right now, but I mean, I know it's a lot different.
I'm sure changing those systems is not an overnight thing. Advocates for substance use disorder pushed and got a Mental Health and Substance Use Disorder Parity Act passed. That was just about that equality. Mental health and substance use disorder should be treated as easily as physical problems. But unfortunately, the bill didn't have any teeth in it, really. Like, it's passed, it exists, but it's not super enforceable.
I just thought of this other example of going into the ER. And, this girl had talked about to me before we went in there that she had been raped and that she had, woken up without any of her clothes on.
Mm.
Well, when we get to the ER and I tell the ER doctor that, he turns around and he looks at me and he goes, "Do you know how long one of those rape kit takes?" And I'm just like, unbelievable that we're being like shunned from like, or being like, treated like we're an inconvenience because she needs a rape kit. And guess what? With that attitude, she was like, "Oh yeah, I don't need that."
Mm-hmm.
Because of, that situation. It's crap. It really is. It's like,
That's why I think coaches are important, because if it were me who was your client at that time, I wouldn't want to go through the headache of filing grievances. No,
Yeah.
This doctor treated me inhumanely. He minimized trauma that happened to me. He didn't want to take the time to do a procedure.
Yeah, exactly. Like treated her like she wasn't important enough to have that. That is just unbelievable. Oh, and I have good news. I found out that there's a place over in Ludington that will do testing now for women, the SANE testing. You can go in there and do it. You don't even need to go to the hospital. I thought that was such a really good a thing, because it's just, like I said, going to the hospital and having a procedure like that. I mean, just the thought of like, being like told, "Oh, well, do you know how long that takes?" And then just because he knew she was high on meth. It makes me so angry. Like she deserved to be raped. Like maybe it didn't even happen to her because she was so high,
Maybe we need some law enforcement in there too. So medical personnel realize this is something important and that it might be needed down the road if anything was going to be charged against anybody.
And I know sometimes the presence of police can make situations worse.
And sometimes their attitudes can be just as bad.
Yeah, because
that's true.
There's
I didn't think
stigma
about that.
on both sides too,
Mm.
So like then someone doesn't want to talk to the police because they are thinking about the stigma and the prejudice against police officers. And people in addiction don't want to go to the hospital or see doctors because of that stigma and prejudice against the medical community. And it's like, where do we stop? Is just trying it. You have to try, you have to go out and speak up. And that is like the hardest thing to do, is take that chance that someone's not going to like you, that you're going to make someone uncomfortable by saying something. I know I don't like it. Like, I have such a heart for advocacy, but my voice gets a little squeaky.
Right. Hey, Grayson, could you tell us again the 5 people or the 5 organizations that benefit from stigma?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't write those down earlier. Thank
If
you.
you send me the slides, I can send them out.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh, cool.
So where? I've got it highlighted in my notes like 3 times. Like, make sure you say this repeatedly.
You did too, and I didn't write it down.
okay.
I'm just sitting there listening.
So it's media,
Uh-huh.
the criminal justice industrial complex,
Okay.
child welfare systems,
Right. Okay.
alcohol and pharmaceutical companies,
Okay.
and the addiction treatment industry.
And I would like to point that last one out, that there are a lot of places out there for addiction treatment that are in it just to make money, turn and burn. They're not there to actually help people. And I've heard a lot about this recently.
It was kind of devastating for me to begin to see how much money was being spent in northern Michigan, and we have such a lack of available resources for people. It just blew my mind. Like, what are we doing? Like, when do we assess ourselves and say, like, okay, maybe the problem isn't that the disease is complex. Maybe we're coming at this the wrong way. I'm gonna get fired my first year in.
No, you're not. I stick behind you 100%.
I know it's tough to talk about, because we are embedded in those systems.
Yeah,
We are.
totally.
I think maybe with the help of some other organizations, I think I would like to somehow do a stigma and language town hall, face to face.
Have you
Programs.
Have you gotten the FAN stigma workbook?
Yes, I do. I've got a bunch of them. I put them on my table.
They're good. They're pretty good stuff.
I like the self-stigma part in those books. It's really good because us people in recovery beat ourselves up, or even in active addiction, we beat ourselves up so bad because we hear all the stuff that people say. And so it's just constantly loser, asshole, dumbass,
Mm-hmm.
I love that part of that book because it explains, you're not who you think you are in those kind of ways,
I think people in society think that when we focus too much on stigma, that what we're doing is excusing people from the consequences of their actions. And you can be nice to people and treat people with respect and still, if someone breaks into a house, even if they have a substance use disorder, they did break into that house and they're probably going to be punished for those consequences. You can still treat that person with respect and dignity. I don't know, it's crazy how rude people can be.
Mm-hmm. It really is. I think, like I said, a lot of that comes from having a personal negative experience with addiction. Maybe they have a parent that was an alcoholic. Maybe they watched a cousin kill themselves with drugs. Maybe they had a significant other. And those scars, they go through life then. And anytime they hear about someone, anything substance related, they are ready to condemn and lash out because they've already made their judgment in advance.
Yeah. So actual traumas are causing them to stigmatize people that have had traumas themselves.
Yeah, I think we all need therapy. I think everyone needs to be in therapy. I don't understand people that are like, no, I went for 3 months and I'm good. Like, really? Are you sure? That's not a lot of time.
No.
Maybe
Figure
for
out
like
your-
a 6-year-old, Holy cow.
Figure out all your life problems in 3 months.
Right?
That'd be
Wow.
I've got to jump off, you guys.
Yeah, it's about that
Thank
time.
you. What a great conversation and a great presentation, Grayson. You did awesome. I loved it. Very relatable.
Well,
for the
thank you,
good
Kim.
Conversations to everybody. Love you long time. See you soon. Grayson, we gotta somehow get together. You're way over there and I'm way over here, somewhere meet in the middle or do something.
I'm in the middle here.
Yeah.
Oh,
right?
that's true.
Mhm.
Mm.
Well,
Okay.
it's
All right, later, kids.